This episode is brought to you by Karen Grill. Optimize your offers to maximize your profit, generate leads, book more calls, increase your conversions, and build invincible funnels. Visit karengrill.com. And as always, the book Conversations, How to Manage Your Business Relationships One Conversation at a Time by yours truly, Ivan Farber. Visit conversations.biz for more information. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Conversations About Conversations. This is a show for people who want to become more effective in their conversations and their business relationships. Our goal is to make the business world a better place, one conversation at a time. Our guest today is here to help us in our endeavor. Her name is Karen Grill. Karen is a certified master persuader and strategist. She's a business coach and speaker. She's trained in the science of persuasion and sales psychology. One of her areas of expertise is funnels. Her formula is funnel strategy plus persuasive copy equals profitable business. Please help me welcome back to Conversations About Conversations, Karen Grill. Karen, welcome back.
Thanks so much, Ivan. It's great to be back with you.
Now, our topic today is being persuasive. And personally, and I think my audience as well would feel this way, we'd love to know how to be more persuasive. So I'd like to actually start by giving you an opportunity to make an opening statement as we begin to take on the topic of persuasion.
One of the reasons that I started to focus on persuasion was that I had worked with so many coaches and consultants and service providers, and they're experts in their field, but they were never able to really get the clients or have the sales that they want because they weren't able to convey it in a way to their ideal clients. And I realized that persuasion was so important to the sales process. And so that's where I went down and learned all about that and was certified so that I could really help my clients, but also, of course, myself to be able to be persuasive. And I talk about it in a way of making sure persuasion is for ethical people. It's not manipulation, but we're really trying to help people make the right decision for them. And we hope then that the decision is working with us.
It sounds like it's very rewarding for you because you figured out something your clients need and you're able to support them with it 100%.
Definitely. Like I said, both my clients and also for myself.
Well, I often like to look to the dictionary. A word like persuasion is known, but then has a lot of different meanings for different people in different contexts. So I looked up persuasion. The verb persuade is to cause someone to do something or believe something through reasoning or argument. Would you like to elaborate on that definition?
I do agree with that. The one thing that I think is a misnomer is that I can persuade you. Really, we persuade ourselves based on outside stimuli. So I can't force you to believe something, Ivan, but I can definitely help you see the way I think, the best decision can be made, and you make that decision. So I can't do it to you, you do it to yourself.
Excellent distinction. I also looked at the Latin derivation and just some synonyms, and the synonyms were interesting as well as the Latin. So the synonyms: convince, advise, assure, cajole, coax, enlist, and entice. Mm-hmm. So to me, persuade is kind of like in the middle of that. And a lot of these words are synonyms, but they're a little bit more on the edges. And then the Latin derivation was interesting. The word per is through to completion, and sudare is advice or advise. Mm-hmm. So advise through to completion. And that really is what you're doing when you're supporting people with persuasion, is you're helping to give them advice and get them where they need to go.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I definitely think it's us supporting them to make a best decision. So I think that's to completion, is really to make that decision, whether it's working with me or not working with me, or buying this course or not buying this course, or having a conversation or not having a conversation. I think it's just giving them the best information so that they can make the best decision for themselves.
Now, how would you say persuasion is different from influence?
That's interesting. So I do think there is a difference. Again, a lot of times persuasion is talked about more in terms of, I think, the sales process. Influencing is really causing people to take certain actions. It's not necessarily in the sales process as much. We hear a lot about kind of influencers who actually a lot of times don't even have direct contact with people. It's more kind of on social media, right? They show what they're doing and people try to follow along. So it's a little different in terms, I think, of thinking of persuasion for business and influencing for business. Influencing can lead to that kind of end result of buying, but it's not like we typically have kind of direct contact. So there's no coaching kind of involved. There's no one-on-one conversations. I think that's the difference that I see.
So influence might be more macro and persuasion is more micro in your thinking.
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of what I see in terms of the business landscape for sure.
For you as a business coach and the clients you work with, it's nice to influence them, and you could do that by posts, but where you can really make a difference is when they're talking to you and you're looking specifically at their offer and how persuasive their offer is.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Speaking about persuasive offers, what are some of the components and intricacies that makes an offer persuasive?
Mm-hmm. So there's quite a lot of components that I think are necessary to have that persuasive offer. And it's not only the components themselves, it's actually having them kind of in the right order, right? So you have to think of your offer or your sales page, whatever you're looking at, as kind of the customer journey. And so you do have to take them kind of step by step through it. A lot of people just kind of post, you get the features, right? So they'll say you get this many calls, you get a Facebook group, but you haven't really shown them what is this going to do for them. So really the main thing is to have that hook. So you're identifying that correct audience, that they're resonating with what you're selling, but also that you're showing them what is the transformation for them, what's in it for them, right? People don't care about us, unfortunately, they only care about themselves. So we really have to show them that we understand their urgent pain points and that we have the system or the process or the group coaching, whatever that is, to take them from this pain point that they have to a solution. And so it's really kind of formulating your offer in a way that takes them down so they understand that, oh my gosh, she has all these things that resonate with me, and so that she is the right solution to help me with my problem.
Can you give an example of a journey that you've helped someone with?
Mm-hmm. I've worked with quite a few accountants, right? And I think most people would agree that they probably don't always have maybe the most interesting work. I mean, they're working with numbers. It's kind of very basic, but I think it's really important for someone like that in that kind of industry to really think about their specific process. And so it was really working with them to draw a process. It's not just talking about numbers. I can do your books each month. I can, make sure that you're getting a profit and, not a loss, those kinds of things, but really showing that you support them every step of the way and talk about your way of working with clients. And everybody has a different way. And that's what makes it so interesting, that your specific way won't work for everyone, but it'll work for those specific people that you want to help. And so I think each and every one of us can figure out our own method or process of working with someone. And when you have that outlined, people feel like, wow, this person has a whole system. I can feel confident they're going to help me get the results. And so we really worked on figuring out what makes this one accountant different from every other accountant, and showing how you can have that process. So really reeling them in with a really persuasive hook, talking about that transformation. You have to have some backup things. So things like testimonials or case studies, so people know you've actually worked with people. That makes a huge difference as well. And then, talking about the benefits, not just the features. So features are the things that are included, like you get 5 modules and 10 calls. Those are the features. But you have to talk about the benefits. So what is the benefit of having those 5 calls, right? So what does that give you? What is the end result? We'll work through this on the first call. Maybe that's setting up a plan, right? And then the second one, we do this next step. So you really have to spell it out for people, the benefits, not just the features. And then of course, you're going to have some options for them at the bottom in terms of what are they going to be purchasing? Is this a service? Is it just calls? What's included in that? So you really have to have kind of this whole order. The problem is most people skip that top, talking about that transformation, talking about your way of working with people. And without that, you look like every other accountant or coach or whatever that is for you. So I think those are some of the ways that I really work with my clients to kind of draw that out of them, and so that we can differentiate them from everybody else in the market.
What's your method for drawing it out of them?
It's definitely asking questions. And I think one of the things that a lot of service providers make mistakes is they'll ask a question of like, okay, what is your challenge, right? People will give you the answer, The problem is it's typically kind of a surface, superficial answer, right? They don't really dig down. And so it's really incumbent on, me or whatever business you're in is to really listen and to ask digging, kind of probing questions to get really to the thing. A lot of people say, I don't have enough time. But you really need to dig down. Okay, what does that mean? You don't have enough time, right? And so it's really looking, do you not have a system? Do you not have a plan? Do you not have a time management system? Like really digging further. So you get to really the kind of beneath the surface actual problem so that you know that you're solving the right problem for them, because then you can really come up with a plan that works for them. And so it's really kind of spending time with them, really listening to what they're saying and trying to ask those probing questions.
It's not easy to do the active listening. It's not intuitive in our busy world, but I do find that the first thing people say is just the tip of the iceberg, and you can peel back the iceberg. And if you just go 2 or 3 follow-up questions, you really get something much more meaningful to that person in a way that you can really help them, that if you just stopped at the tip, you just can't help them in the same way because you don't understand what they need.
Exactly. And I think that's the mistake that a lot of business owners make. They have a list of questions and they ask the questions, and those can be great questions. But again, you really need to be thinking, is this really the true answer? Is there something beneath that? Because a lot of clients are a little hesitant, especially if you're new. They don't want to give you those kind of beneath kind of problems that they're actually having. But in order for you to really serve them at the highest level, that's what we need to get to. And so it takes a little practice and working with different kinds of people to get to that. But it's really rewarding for both sides. I think it's a win-win.
I'm going to be giving a talk in a couple of days. And one of the questions that I really want to impart upon the group is the question, what do you mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
Because most of us say things, myself included, and I don't actually know what I mean by that. It's that act and dialogue of really looking and saying, okay, what did I mean by that? That really is just a winning question across the board. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, asking those open-ended questions can really kind of open up the conversation. And again, that's when it's so important as a business owner to really listen to the words. And I definitely write down word for word what people say, because if you can reflect that back in your messaging, then people will really resonate and realize, wow, this person really understands my actual problems, and that they will hopefully then turn to you for the solution.
Right. I teach that as well, that if you hear something in what they just said and you grab 1 or 2 words and you use that in your question back to them, they're like, wow, that really, as you say, you're really in my head because you really listen. So you and I have many of the same values about using questions skillfully, listening. And I think that's why we like to collaborate with each other.
Exactly.
Now we're going to move into the lightning round. 8 ways to use persuasion in your conversations with certified master persuader, Karen Grill. Karen, I'm going to read off the 8 ways we're going to go over, and then we'll go through them one by one. So the 8 ways to use persuasion in your conversations is: number 1, limit the options. Number 2, social proof. Number 3, disruption. Number 4, self-select. Number 5, micro commitments. Number 6, placement matters. Number 7, reciprocity. And number 8, show, don't tell. So let's start with number 1, limit the options.
Most people have to make like 70 choices a day, and it's really taxing on us and our brains. And so we have a hard time making those decisions. And so especially as business owners, we want to make it easy for our clients to make a decision and to work with us. When we have too many options, especially if we're newer business owners, I always say confused minds don't take action, confused minds don't buy. So we need to make sure that we're making it super clear and simple for them. So for instance, if you're just starting out, I would have one solid offer, and that's the only thing really that you offer to people. Now, you can also have different levels of the same offer, right? So a lot of times on maybe sales pages and in conversations, you can talk about, well, I have a silver, a gold, and a platinum offer, right? So there's differing levels of service, but it's still one offer. And so that people always say, Karen, I can't just do one offer. I have all these different kinds of people. I have all these different kinds of people and different needs that they have. And I think this is a way to get around that. So you have one main offer, but maybe you have it kind of different options in terms of level of support from you. But again, we want to make sure that we're limiting the options so that people will actually take action.
One thing you mentioned at the start there was 70 decisions a day. And I'm not sure who measured that or how they measure that, but there definitely is a real thing that I've encountered myself and with others is decision fatigue, that we make so many decisions in a day that it's overwhelming and we actually feel the fatigue.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Steve Jobs was said to have worn blue jeans and black shirt every day so that it was just a decision he didn't have to make at all.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the number 2 way to use persuasion in your conversations is social proof. What do you mean by social proof?
So social proof is having other people recommend or talk about a product in a positive way. And I just want to start with saying that our brains are amazing, but they're also quite lazy. So any way they can take a shortcut, they're going to do it. And so I think that's why social proof is so good, because our brains want to just know, oh, someone else is using this product or this service. Well, then there must be a reason. You can read the review and they can make the decision. The brain itself doesn't have to do all the designing, analyzing, and kind of reviewing everything. If there's a shortcut, it will take it. And social proof is one way that you can really build trust, show authority, and help our brains take that shortcut.
Would you say branding is part of social proof?
Branding can be, but it's mostly about making sure that other people are talking about you, right? So it's kind of having that visibility and having those raving fans who are saying, oh, this product or this person is wonderful, you should check them out, right? That kind of social proof is really helpful to our brains.
Testimonials as well?
Definitely. Testimonials, case studies, anything that you can use that shows other people have worked with you or have used the product, that is really makes a difference for our brains.
Now, the number 3 way to use persuasion is disruption. That intrigues me. What is disruption?
So as I mentioned, our brains are lazy. And if they can, when we're reading something or we're talking to something, our brain likes to autofill. It will try to guess, or it has other situations that's been in, it'll try to kind of fill in what it thinks the information will be. And as you can imagine, with all the distractions we have, it's hard to get people to focus. So one way to kind of get them out of that typical pattern is to use words in different ways, to talk about things differently. So when you have a sales page, when you have a sales conversation, when you're naming things, try to mix it up a little bit, use words in a little different way, or use words that people don't typically use, and in a way that will kind of wake up our brains so they'll actually listen and focus.
Could you give an example of a disruptive word?
Sure. So an example that I use a lot is a lot of people say, beat around the bush is a typical phrase that you might say. So I typically will change that up and say beat around the shrubbery, right? Just that one change in a word that people are used to hearing will kind of make the brain wake up. So any way you can use that with typical phrases, change up the first word or the last word, that can really make a difference.
Got it. I love that. Like taking a cliche and something people expect and disrupting it and making people actually listen. Like, wait, what did she just say?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And we all have those phrases. They're in our vernacular, dead as a doornail. Well, what about dead as a door screw?
Exactly.
Something like that. All right. The number 4 way to use persuasion in your conversations is to self-select. What do you mean by self-select?
So one way to make sales conversations a lot easier, you're not having to convince people, is if you're actually getting the right people to have these conversations with. And one way is when you actually are calling the right people out. So you'll see often that I'll call out coaches, right? Because I work with a lot of coaches. So other people know this isn't really for them. And if they're a coach, they're like, oh, this might be for me. So they're self-selecting that, oh, yes, this is for me. I want to continue. So you can do that with your copy, through your content, through your conversations. You can even do that through testimonials. So if you're showcasing coaches will see themselves in that and say, oh, yeah, this could possibly be for me, right? So before we even have a sales conversation, it's nice if we know, oh, this is already a coach. They've already seen my things. So they know they've already self-selected that they're in the right place, talking with the right person.
Yes. I find in my work with a lot of salespeople is they kind of push their process and their products at somebody instead of doing it in such a way that they're a little bit teasing people and letting them self-select. The method I write about in my book and that I love to coach on is, I call it the dessert tray. And in the dessert tray, it's like when you go to a restaurant, if a waiter just shows up with the dessert tray in your face, you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But if the waiter says, in the back, I've got a dessert tray, would you like to see it? The moment they self-select and they say, yes, I'd like to see it, it's a very different conversation. And I also use it in a very serious topic, is when someone is concerned or upset. In the work I do as a financial counselor, they may or may not think that they want to hear the answer. And if I'm premature in giving them the answer, they might recoil. But if I say, would you like to know what I think? And I wait, it's amazing. It works magic, because then they will actually listen. They have self-selected.
And it also follows with our next point as well.
Our number 5 way to use persuasion in your conversations is micro commitments.
So micro commitments is helping them, and before they buy from you or sign up for a program, you get them to say little yeses along the way. And so you were kind of alluding to that with some of your questions, right? So whether it's maybe you have a lead magnet and they sign up for that, that's a micro commitment. If you have a post on social media and they like it and even then comment, those are little micro commitments. And the more they have, the more you build those up over time, the easier it will be then for them to see you as the next person to maybe have that sales conversation with, or buy one of your courses or products, right? So getting those yeses, both in a sales conversation, you love to get those yeses because you know they're on the same path, you're together, they're understanding what you're talking about. But even in your content, or your social media, or your lead magnets and your sales pages, getting those yeses along the way help make it easy for them to say yes to the bigger things.
You're building a bridge.
Exactly.
You're maybe building a suspension bridge where it starts with one wire, another wire goes around that wire, and then eventually you're able to really make the sales process smooth because you already have that bridge.
Yep, exactly.
There's a conversational concept called conversational turns and transactional analysis, where it actually shows that saying less, getting the other person to add a turn and increasing the number of turns is what you're talking about as the micro commitments. Because each time you stop and the other person says something, that is literally a micro commitment to the conversation and then to where you're headed.
I like that way you talked about it as a turn. I like that.
Conversational turns. Now, the number 6 way to use persuasion in your conversations is placement matters. What do you mean by placement matters?
Sure. So I've audited many offers, and a big mistake that I see people make is they'll have a bullet list of things, maybe for their offer. And a lot of times they have their best thing in the middle. But research has shown that really we remember the last thing the best, and the next best is the first. So you want to have your most important points either be the first or the last. And I think that's true with conversations as well. A lot of times the last thing is probably what people remember the best. And if you had to ask them, they might remember the first thing as well. Those middle things kind of get lost, unfortunately. So just remember that when you're trying to be persuasive, have your most ones like last and first.
I write about that in my book as well. There's an accounting term, LIFO, last in, first out. And what I have found consistently in my conversation lab and in tens of thousands of conversations, when you put forth a list or an agenda, the last item is usually the item you start with, which isn't intuitive. You would think, okay, I listed it 1, 2, 3, but usually people start with 3, 2, 1, which then in my coaching, I have people really think about, okay, what's the most important item to talk about and make it last. It's very counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, that's exactly the same as kind of the idea of being careful about the placement of things is so important to really having a persuasive offer or message.
Or as they say in real estate, location, location, location.
Love it. Yep.
Or they could say in disruption, placement, placement, placement.
Oh, I like it.
The number 7 way to use persuasion in your conversations, reciprocity. Reciprocity?
Yes. So in general, humans love to give. So if they get something, they like to do something in return. There was actually a study done by a sociologist. He sent out 600 Christmas cards to random people he did not know. And he got back over 200 responses. And he was really shocked at this. And he really attributed it to the reciprocity idea that people got this amazing card from someone they didn't know, and they felt the need or the want or the desire to give back a card as well. And as business owners, and even in conversations, we need to think about that. So if a lot of times we give a lead magnet, people are willing to give their email for that, right? So whether it's a PDF or a guide, people want to actually get the information and give you their email in exchange. The same thing can be when it's coupons or sales or deals. A lot of times people will see that and then they'll want to purchase, right? So there are things we can do with this idea of reciprocity to really help ensure that we're having a two-way conversation. It's not just always us putting things out, but that people are responding as well. A lot of times in my emails, I'll say, hit reply and let me know what you think. And you would be amazed at the number of people who actually do that, even though there's nothing really in it for them, but I gave them an email, hopefully with some value that they found, and then they're willing to respond to me and talk back.
And you're asking them for their opinion, and people like to be asked for their opinion. And you've just given your opinion and value in your email. So they're saying, well, she just gave me something, I could give something in return. So reciprocity is the number 7 way. And now the number 8 way to use persuasion in your conversations is to show, don't tell.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean?
I think we get trapped in thinking that we can only kind of talk about our product or service and just list the ways that you would work with us. But I think it can be so much more compelling if you can show that. And I think you'll see this a lot kind of with software products. They have demos, right? And a lot of service providers, but Karen, I'm a coach, I don't have a demo. But there are ways that you can showcase maybe a call or a group setting that you've had so people can see in, or maybe a live video or like a live kind of event so people can see what it's like to work with you, right? The more we can show them as opposed to just writing the words, the more likely they are to kind of connect with us. People are visual and people like to see other people. They like to feel they have a connection. Sometimes that's harder to do with words alone. So having that combination of both words, but also maybe showing them in some way can be a way to really help people make the best decision. And hopefully that's working with you.
What I really like about how you teach and coach is how thoughtful you are and how you've thought through all these things. So I want to thank you for teaching me these 8 different ways. As we begin to wrap up, what else should be in this conversation that we haven't talked about yet?
So I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see business owners make is they have an idea for an offer or service that they think solves the problem of their potential clients. But really, we need to talk to them first. We really need to understand what are their problems. We can have it in our head, but a lot of times when we put it out there, people hear crickets. And the reason is they haven't taken the time to really talk with people, to have the conversations with potential clients, with past clients, even with people who maybe wouldn't be a client, but you just want to get some additional information. The more we get from our market itself, the actual potential people we would be working with, the better and more refined our offers can be. And that's when you start to see the success, that they actually kind of fly off the shelves in a sense, because we've taken the time to understand those pain points and then show them that we have a solution that will help them.
Once again, I'm going to acknowledge you for what I get that you've shown me. And that is that you get really excited when you help your clients create an offer that people buy, that it, as you said, flies off the shelf, which is a way of showing.
Yeah, that's what makes me excited and really passionate about what I do. I've worked with a lot of people and I've gotten better at helping them. And I just want to make sure that they're able to have the business that really fits their life. And the way to do that is have offers that convert.
And in closing, what would you like people to do as a result of listening to this conversation?
If you're interested in learning more about persuasion and offers and funnels, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm there quite a bit. But also, if you go to karengrill.com/conversations, I'm going to have a special resource that goes through the things that we talked about today, those 8 persuasive tactics, so that you can actually start to use them in your business as well.
Well, Karen, thank you very much for this conversation. And to everybody out there, I invite you to reach out to me and tell me what you think. Tell me what kind of content you'd like to see on the show. and become a part of this Conversations community. So with that, Karen Grill and everybody out there, thank you for being a part of this conversation about conversations.